Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you're new here, and today we are talking about The Ever Queen, which is the second book in the Ever Sea series following Eric and Livia. And I kind of explained how the series works in the Ever Queen video, so I will tag that one somewhere up here in case you haven't watched it. But other than that, let's just dive right in. So when I wrote the blog post for The Ever Queen, I couldn't beat LJ Andrews' summary. So I'm going to read LJ Andrews' summary and then also the little note that she left on the bottom of the summary. The Songbird, captive challenger queen. Enemies took her from the man who holds her heart. They might see her as weak, as a pawn in wicked games, but they're no match for the first ever queen. Let them think they've won. Her heart belongs to a beautiful monster and she will never stop fighting until she's back in his arms. The Serpent, captor, villain, king. His enemies stole the woman who claimed his soul. They betrayed him out of greed and desire for the crown. But they won't die for that betrayal. No, they'll die for touching her. His heart belongs to a stunning little bird. He will never stop searching for her light across the skies. Not until the blood of his enemies spills at her feet and his queen wears their bones around her neck. And LJ Andrews' note underneath reads, "Welcome back to the world of the Ever Kingdom, where pirates collide with Vikings in passionate romance, brutal battles, and an unforgettable dark fantasy world. This book concludes the love story between Eric and Livia, but a new, standalone romance with other favorite characters will continue to build the world. Readers are encouraged to check the trigger warnings inside the book for their reading comfort." So lately, I feel like I've been experiencing this phenomenon within my reading recaps where the second book in the series just kind of sucks. It just sucks and I'm not enjoying it. I'm not having a good time anymore. There have been quite a few second books that I've been DNFing because I just can't take it anymore. The Ever Queen, however, does not suffer from second book syndrome. The Ever Queen is so good in my not very humble opinion. The Ever Queen picks up right at the end of the Ever Queen picks up right off where the Ever King left off. So there's not really a gap or anything. We're pretty much diving right back into the story, which is fantastic because the Ever King leaves off on a fairly painful cliffhanger. So it's nice that we just get right into it. And like the Ever King, the Ever Queen is also fairly consistent in terms of pacing. I didn't really have any issues with that. We are introduced to some new kingdoms in this book, which I'm kind of neutral on. I didn't love it. I also didn't hate it. It was a very interesting aspect, but in the Ever King, I kind of had a little bit of a gripe with the lack of world building, so introducing new kingdoms to us just felt kind of maybe counterproductive. But like I said, I'm very neutral on my feelings about the new kingdoms. If anything, they were interesting. But I definitely would have liked to know more about the kingdoms that we did have. Something that I also liked about the Ever Queen is that even though we're wrapping up Eric and Livia's story, we're starting Jonas's story, which is very, very interesting. I'm very interested to see how the dynamics work in this new kingdom, because from what we got, the glimpse we got in the Ever Queen, it's very, very different from the Everseas and the Earth realms and the Fae that live in those like territories. Now we're kind of dealing with elven clans and their traditions and laws and values. And so I'm just very excited to see how the two different cultures come together and also how they clash. That's going to be very exciting as well. And we kind of got a glimpse of that in this book, not to jump too far ahead, but we did get a glimpse of it in this book. So I'm very interested to see just to continue on into the third book. To be honest though, the plot's pretty strong, but it's not why I love this series. This series I love because of the characters. So let's go talk about the characters. I just want to say, I just want to put it out there and let it be known that aside from the antagonists, I really loved all the men in this book. Eric, Jonas, Sander, Val and Ferris, Stieg. Yes, I really had such a fun time reading them. And it was also really nice to see Valen and Livia have such a beautiful father-daughter dynamic. And it was just so refreshing to see parents and even like not biological parents supporting like younger characters, and there was a lot of wholesome moments in this book between a lot of characters, and there's a moment between Stieg and Eric that made me cry in the best way. Eric is still the villain, but it's kind of interesting to see his evolvement, because it's interesting to see his character really evolve in this book. He goes from someone who's very angry and wants revenge, and someone he doesn't really think too far outside of getting his revenge. And it's really refreshing to see him begin to grow as a character, because his motivations for doing so are the right ones. He really wants to be someone who is worthy of Livia's love. And I think because of her relationship with her parents and how close it is, and just that bond of her parents instilling in Livia that she deserves someone who's going to respect her and love her on both equal fronts, and not someone who's going to give her anything less, that she really deserves the best when it comes to a partner. And I think Eric is someone who sees this, and he wants to be that person who is worthy of Livia Ferris. I do think he is worthy of Livia Ferris, but it's nice to see Eric evolve into a point where he's becoming that person. Valen Ferris in this book is very much dad, and this is kind of where I'm tied on wanting to read the Broken Kingdom series, because in that series he's much younger, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with reading about him as daddy versus dad, you know? Like, he's this very loving, strong, protective father figure, and I just don't know if I can do it. But enough about the men. Then we have Livia Ferris, our queen. Literally, she's the ever queen. We stan. Even Livia gets a good dose of character development. I do think, despite her being a strong female main character, she does kind of suffer from being a little naive at times. And I think even Livia is someone who wants to be someone who Eric deserves. And I just find that dynamic of their relationship so interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And something that I really, really liked about this book is that Eric and Livia were not separated the whole book, just to be reunited in the last 3% of the book, and then it was done. They were separated for a little bit, and then they were reunited. They both went through some shit, and now they're kicking ass back together. And that's what I really love, because Eric and Livia are just perfect for each other. And as always, I loved the side characters in this book. I love the side characters in the Ever King, and we are introduced to some new kind of side characters in the Ever Queen, and they are very interesting. Some of them we will see in the Mist Thief, so that'll be interesting. But I genuinely just loved this book. I genuinely loved the growth that all the characters went through. I loved that nothing really came too easy. A lot of the events the characters go through, they're actually there for a reason. There's not really any conveniences for the plot. Characters don't just get out of things like that, which I really like. Overall, this was just a really good sequel and a really, really good follow-up to the Ever King. And kind of like I said in my review for the Ever King, it's so hard for me to articulate my love for this series and these characters and this world that L.J. Andrews has created, because I just was so immersed the whole time that I was reading, and I just love Livia and Eric and Valen and Jonas and Stieg and Sewell and just everyone. I loved the characters. I loved the inner circle of the Everseas, and there were so many good things about this book that I enjoyed. The Ever King was really good for kind of setting things up and that slow burn tension, and then at the end of the book there's this plot twist, and so we go into the second book with things kind of being, I don't want to say shattered, but things are kind of cracked. They're a little broken. They need to be mended. And Eric and Livia are fighters, and so that's what they do. They just fight their way back to each other, and I just really love it. There was also some smut in this book. The smut was, as usual, on point, no complaints. And yeah, I just 5 out of 5 stars, a billion stars. I just love Eric and Livia. I love the Everseas duology. I cannot wait for the Mist Thief. I cannot wait for Jonas's book, because Jonas gives me the vibe of reformed playboy, and I don't know, that's going to be really interesting, and his dynamic with the character that's introduced in the Ever Queen is going to be even more interesting, because we don't have too much background on her, and I think getting to know her a lot better is going to be one of the highlights of the book, to be honest. But I am getting ahead of myself again. It's so hard to focus on the Ever Queen, knowing that a lot of what was in the Ever Queen is building up to the Mist Thief, so it's kind of hard to not intersect my thoughts on one book with what I'm excited about for the next book. But anyways, I will leave it there. 5 out of 5 stars. It was such a great book, such a great duology. I'm a big fan of Eric and Livia, and like I said, this is a dark fantasy romance, so it is a little bit more violent than maybe some other fantasy romance books, but all in all, it's nothing too bad. In my opinion, LJ Andrews does provide trigger warnings, so you can always check that before you start reading it, but this book is also on Kindle Unlimited if you want to read it, and I just recommend you read it because I loved it. I had such a good time, and I want you to have a good time, so yeah. And if you have read these books, I would love to know your opinion on them, because I think I'm a little biased. I had such a good time reading them, but obviously someone else might not have. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.